Okay, we are here to discuss how to change your life with the example given here by Scott Anderson, who achieved incredible results in the time we worked together. You can see this is a different person from the start of when we got to work grips on things and to the finished article. But the trick is, we're never really the finished article. We just keep getting better and better. So, why are you here? You're here to learn how this kind of transformation is possible. Now, Scott had a number of prerequisites in place, being that he was out of shape, he had a toxic feedback system, a negative self-worth, a lack of control of food and associated triggers, recovering from a broken forearm, lacking confidence, and he was unable to do simple bodyweight movements like press-ups or dips. But he was driven, relentless and determined to make a change, which is why he contacted me in the first place and admitted that this was time. It was time for him to make a change. So we kind of worked together to establish a solid foundation. We actively listened to where he was at and where he wanted to get to, what his challenges were, the goals, the motivations behind these goals. And amongst all that, we of course cannot get anywhere without building rapport based on trust and collaboration, which is fundamental to this whole process. I cannot help you unless you help me help you. We have to communicate from the off. And this journey was just a perfect example of how that worked with such great synergy. So what that involved was a period of mindset coaching where you could identify and overcome limiting beliefs, fostering an adaptive and empowered mindset. Because if you're in this position where you have to move away from a position that you're really not happy with, there is a lot that goes into that. And part of the reframing of the physical is the reframing of the mental. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of work that's gone into getting you to this place that you need to get away from. And what a better place to do it. Now, we also obviously included custom fitness and nutrition work and plans that align with his lifestyle, preferences, and unique needs. And this is an ever-changing feedback reel. Part of what I feel determines a good coach is the ability to adapt, and we constantly adapted this journey for Scott because one, his goals were always changing. He wanted to explore new movements and get better at new things a lot of the time, which speaks to his character and the explorative nature of how he explores his physical prowess and the mental capability behind that too. We, of course, delve into the guidance on these physical techniques, so like weightlifting, gymnastics, conditioning, fitness, bodybuilding, all these different elements. That this is where I kind of bring my value to the table in this journey. This is where I really have to prove myself, and we do. Then we of course have the nutritional guidance and the education to go with that, because of course the nutrition is a huge part of this, not just the training, not just the mindset, but you have to get the nutrition right, because of course the stomach is essentially the second brain. So we need to keep that as in line with the value-driven lifestyle that we're trying to achieve, and that tends to require a lot of due care and given attention. And then, of course, the science behind these practices. So a constant education process from start to finish, which again is only facilitated by the feedback reel that we build. So, we navigated accountability, progress tracking, adaptive plans based on his progress, changing circumstances, and all this was geared towards keeping him committed and motivated to what was a long-term commitment to a long-term project. Of course, we celebrate each milestone we achieve, big or small. They happen all the time. Small, of course, happens more frequent, but we do have big goals in mind, and I'll get to what those big goals actually were with Scott. And we address the challenges that come with opportunities for growth and learning, because life isn't without challenges. So we have to learn to be able to navigate them, to adapt around them, to learn from them, and ultimately succeed off the back of those. That's what they're there for. They are a test. Excuse me. So as Scott achieves his initial goals, we explore his potential paths for him to take after completing his coaching, fostering a continual journey of self-improvement, which I really do still see to this day. Not only a guy who has embraced a lifestyle that has bettered his physical and mental well-being, but he's now in a place where he can offer that same level of fulfillment to other people in different areas of life. So the fulfillment has led to, well, tenfold of that. So I'm really grateful for Scott to have allowed me to be a part of his journey, and of course wish him well on his path to success from here on out. So here's how it happened. Now, to spark a change, we have to acknowledge a change required, and that is acknowledging the common struggle. And the common struggle that people face when they need help, whether it's related to their fitness, nutrition, mindset, or accountability, is that they cannot recognize that they need help for change. Okay? You want something different. Mindlessly scrolling on your phone, you're drinking most weekends, you're scared to reveal your physique if you go either on a holiday or when the weather gets hot. You find yourself blaming others for being in your position, and you don't admit to yourself that you're the problem, and that the habits and behaviors that have led to this point of ultimately despair. Ultimately, it's really whatever you determine it to be. It is a learning point. And not everyone realizes that they need that eureka moment, that they need to basically first step, admit the problem. And that is with a need to improve. You know you need to do better. You admit that you need help because you do not have the answers, otherwise you wouldn't be in this position. And then you reach out for help. And then there's step one of the process. That is how you kind of open the door. So if I had to break down Scott's process, it's ultimately where we start is by establishing a foundation. And from my side, that is down to a capability to listen and to understand. The importance here cannot be understated of truly listening to Scott's issues, understanding his challenges, his goals, and his motivations. Now, the building rapport that comes after this can only be facilitated by understanding the individual, which takes a lengthy consultation process. We have to understand where he's trying to get to and how I can help him do that. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is a collaborative partnership, and it sets the tone for the entire journey, basically. So, upon the agreement of we will work together, there is two commitments that need to be made. Scott's commitment to my process, what I expect of him, and what he can expect of me. This all forms part of the consultation process, which is where we, again, get a full debrief of Scott's lifestyle, his eating practices, his social circle, his influences, his sleep regime, sex drive. There's all different kinds of things that go into it. The current limitations on exercise, which of course we've stated earlier, which is Scott's ability to have a fully functioning arm and the implications of that. He had a metal plate in his arm. And the lifestyle assessment that we go through basically gives me the further depth of the picture, which we can sometimes miss in the consultation process, and allows a documented version of basically a more considered approach from the client as well. They have more time to work through this. And this lets you give yourself an opportunity to understand where your own long-term goals are and what advice you maybe give to yourself before you start this journey, which you'd be surprised the kind of messages that people give to themselves. Truly inspiring, actually. So the next step after that is where we shift to defining where Scott's goals and his kind of mindset really lays. So what were his goals, clearly and specifically? Not only in terms of physical outcomes, but in terms of like mindset shifts and personal growth. This is a guy who, don't forget, is in a really bad position of negative self-worth because the efforts, the output of his life to that point wasn't something he was happy with. poor eating habits, didn't exercise well, didn't have a regime. So that's part of the problem for a lot of people. If they don't have a regime and they turn up, they even get to the point where they can turn up to the gym, you turn up wondering, what the hell do I do? And even if you get started, where is the clear path to progression? So these are the kind of things that we were working on. And Scott's one of his main goals when we first started was to be able to do a push-up. And with all being well and good, which I promised him he would be able to do that, providing we obviously didn't get any negated situations, making the injury worse, and that the arm was the newly constructed arm, was able to take this, and with the more aspirational goal in mind was that Scott wanted to delve more into the calisthenics kind of route, where we're talking muscle ups and front levers and iron crosses and all these different kind of freestanding handstand push-ups and all these different areas, which obviously thinking back then, we had no idea what we were capable of. But, all to be seen. After that, there is the option of mindset coaching. So we dive into the concept of this and how we identify areas of self-assessment, of limited beliefs, areas of desired improvement to foster a positive and driven mindset. And part of what helps me understand your mindset is the answers that you give in the lifestyle questionnaire, which of course needs to be thorough. So at this point, we have an opportunity for assessment. Starts with the movement assessment, which is where I can understand how well you move to a statistic and what your limitations are. This sets the tone for the work you actually get on board with in your programming. We have dedicated mobility sessions, retesting, and the capabilities that your mobility allows you cannot be understated. Because my programming and what I ask of people is to predominantly live a more functional lifestyle, which means that you have to be able to move functionally. The body has to be functional, which means the movement patterns have to be functional, right? After that, we get a range of physical tests, which include a fitness test, which is just a gauge of current position. And we are then allowed to work towards, because part of physical preparedness is physical fitness. Part of the assessment that we work towards is fitness and the strength that goes with that also. So we have a period of strength tests as well. Then we have a mindset assessment, which is a series of self-assessment on a number of components of your mental status, including self-confidence, your ability to overcome limiting self-beliefs, managing stress, enhancing motivation, improving resilience, among others. From there, a plan is formulated, a personalized plan to yourself, to your lifestyle. Okay, does this kind of ring true to people? It's something that isn't exactly out there for the masses to achieve. It's deemed to be more in the therapy route, but it proved to work wonders for Scott here. Scott is a guy who had a very busy headspace, very busy. And part of the beauty of having a headspace like that is the capability of what you can achieve. But you have to be able to manage that. And part of this personalized plan was how Scott could manage his busy mind, essentially. And there's a framework, a physical framework that we go through to do that. So we navigate through accountability and we track progress. With accountability, we have a system in place. One of those is the regular check-in, weekly check-in, which is an in-depth assessment of your week. Again, self-assessment. You tell me how your week has gone. There's a range of factors going into that. And that is essentially the depth that we need to achieve week on week, which allows us to stay up to date of your stresses, your exceedings, how your training is going, sleep, nutrition, water intake. There's a lot of different things that go into that. Then there is progress tracking through the Trainerize app that we use, which is essentially your training Bible. It's where everything is located. It's where the nutrition is accessed, your macros, your training cycle, and is a really functional tool that really helps us get through this. Then there is also the opportunity to book an accelerator call. So when Scott had times where he was really struggling, maybe his nutrition was off one week, he could have booked, well, he did book calls with myself directly, which is where it's just a case of, listen, I'm struggling here, and I'm not sure if what I'm doing is right. I just need to be told to keep going. And those calls are a really good touch point for when people find themselves in a position that they're unfamiliar with. Because let's not forget, this journey is an unfamiliar journey. You're not always sure if what you're doing is right, if what you're thinking is right. Understand? Then we have a monthly catch-up, which is a call between myself and Scott, where is essentially more of a deep dive. It's where we get it to be a bit more formal. It's a in-depth chat, and it's where we also help to define new goals, what he's happy with, what he wasn't happy with, and a general update of life. It's a system that works really well, and it keeps clients committed, and it keeps them motivated, which is a really huge part for a lot of people to try and stay on board with. It really is. It can't be understated. And of course, with all that, we have to adapt along the way. The importance of flexibility cannot be understated here. Like I've previously said, life throws struggles your way. We have to be able to adapt. There's injuries, there is delays, there's holidays, there's staying late at work, there's family commitments, there is illnesses, a range of issues. And we have to be able to adapt around that based on your progress as an individual and any change in circumstances which you might face. So, leading on from that, we apply fitness and nutrition strategies, which is essentially tailoring the process of nutrition and fitness that aligns with Scott's goals, his preferences, and unique needs. Scott had a real emphasis on the ability to build physical status, which is essentially strong legs, big legs, defined core, defined muscles, defined traps, shoulders, chest, back, and the strength to back that up, but also the ability to move his body. So there is a progressional strength cycle, but also a detailed progressional cycle of body weight control, which is down the calisthenics route. Again, like I talk about muscle ups, calisthenics, pull-ups, and part of our journey of working together, I've got the video evidence to back it up, is that after Scott eventually actually achieved his ability to hit a push-up and get ring dips, prerequisites for a bar muscle-up, lo and behold, during one of our sessions, Scott achieved his first bar muscle-up, which set the stage for where his favourability then began to lie. He was then a muscle-up king. Honest. Never seen anything like it. Then when it comes to the nutrition, we changed his macros on a weekly basis, sometimes bi-weekly, sometimes monthly, which is essentially altering the requirement of protein, carbs, and fats basis the current goal, basis the current body weight, basis your height and your lifestyle, which is tailored to you as an individual to build the body that you're trying to build. Now, that can be in the form of macro tracking, custom meal plans, or even just inspiration from recipe books. Again, all provided through the training platform that we use, which is Trainerize. And one thing that app helps us to do with the functionality of that is my ability to further coach and guide with insight into exercise techniques. So people can send me their video feedback, which is what Scott found himself doing a lot of, particularly as we moved away from the one-to-one sessions and he worked his way through his own sessions in the gym and wanted to be sure his technique was right, his form was correct, especially as we introduced the likes of Olympic weightlifting in there. And the nutritional choices also go in that kind of capability as well. So part of what we can do when we set people up on the Trainerize app is link to your MyFitnessPal. And that's a really useful tool because all you have to do, and Scott again was a great example of this, was just you log your food as normal on the app, and I get to see that your output, your intake, as you see it, it links directly to the app. And if needed, if we're struggling some weeks, check-ins reveal that you're not too happy with how your body's adjusting to, which we found ourselves adjusting to a lot. Scott had this tendency to think that he was getting fluffy when we were in a bulk phase, and then too skinny when we were on a cut phase, which is of course the ongoing battle of those phases of bodybuilding. And yeah, the ability to really zone in on the nutritional choices and the science behind these kind of practices is what really helps to set someone up to be educated to really springboard their success. Now, we're always going to be faced with challenges. We have to overcome those. There's wins as well, and we celebrate those. There are always going to be an opportunity for growth and learning. Now, the main problem for someone who's got such a busy mind is that they're always spinning a lot of plates. And Scott's problem, I won't say it's a problem, but the issue that he faced, that because he was so busy, we had to optimize the time that he was in the gym a lot of the times, which meant adapting his program on the fly, condensing his workouts, because he was a guy who, given the free reign, would train for an extended period of time as well, talking 2 or 3 hours in the gym, because that's what he saw value in, which allowed him to, again, achieve the results that you've seen here. So with every milestone we achieve, big or small, they are unduly celebrated. They maintain motivation, and we acknowledge the journey's progress. And again, I'll remind you all that this guy went from a metal arm, which he couldn't even apply pressure, couldn't press out of a dip from, couldn't do a press up, to a muscle up, which is now his bread and butter. He's got a squat like a king, great hips, and the strength to back it all up. Part of the struggle we actually achieved on this journey was a period where we had gym closures in the UK. It was around COVID times, and one thing we had a big struggle with was, of course, the lack of ability to use gyms. And luckily I had my own equipment available. Didn't have my own gym, but a range of equipment that could be used. And overcoming those kind of challenges when a gym is closed meant that public parks and car parks became our training domain. So we'd find ourselves on weekends, in mornings, getting these sessions in, overcoming the limitation of a lack of a gym, and allowing this guy to still make this insane progress throughout times when many could not, essentially. So upon completing these kind of goals, which he initially set out, he's very well positioned to set new objectives, which is to really delve into the world of calisthenics, because that is a hell of a world to be a part of. One that fosters a continual journey of self-improvement. He actually brought out his own movement, which helped a lot of people, which was called the habitual lifestyle. And the weight of exposure that gravitated, the amount of people that helped, the amount of people that he could then help because he allowed himself to be helped, was staggering. I'm talking in the thousands. And as the coach, that isn't something I can take credit for, but it's something I can watch with immense pride, that I've seen a journey flourish beyond what many could even expect. So when we're talking about exploring the next kind of steps, this guy takes it to a whole new level. Not only impacting 1 or 2 people, telling his story and maybe coaching some people of his own, he helped thousands just through explaining his story, what he went through, and essentially being able to help people by showing what he did. So with the Complacent to Competitive program, we operate a 12-month structure. 4 phases. Phase 1 of that, and phase 1, months 1 to 3, is the build phase, where we build foundations and we establish foundations. essentially for the physical and mental. And what it represents is the beginning of a transformative journey, akin to laying the cornerstone of a building. And as I've detailed earlier, that's where the kind of tests come into play, the fitness, strength, and mindset to understand the starting point, set the clear goals, begin building essential habits. And the build phase was really about creating a strong base from which future progress was built. Key activities, they include the comprehensive lifestyle assessment, which again, I have covered in depth, movement analysis, fitness test, strength test, mindset assessment, goal setting, the introduction to foundational training and nutritional principles, and integration into the complacent to competitive community, which is a thriving community of driven individuals who are really hyping each other up on the daily basis. And at this point, it really is an early mindset coaching opportunity to cultivate positive and growth oriented outlook for the coming months and even year. Moving on from that, we have months 4 to 6, which is the trust phase, where aside from building the foundation, we enhance self-belief and discipline. This is where Scott really began to trust his acts and his intentions. Where you really understand, can I really act on the promises that I make myself? And you only get that through stacking an undeniable foundation of clear evidence that you have essentially gained through your actions. This is where you gather valuable insights, and your initial progress from the build phase really comes to the forefront. At this point is where you kind of really begin to trust the process. You've kind of gotten over the initial phase of limiting self-beliefs, you're building resistance, and the discipline needed to continue the journey, akin to strengthening the kind of structural integrity of the building. And at this point, this is where Scott really came into his own. It's where I was seeing he was kind of the first guy in the gym. I'm talking 5, 6 a.m. daily. He's the guy who's grinding daily for hours and really putting in the work that's going to help him get to where he wanted to be. And sometimes he'd be in there before I got to the gym, and even after I got to the gym when I was doing my own workouts. Now, this phase... come back up there. Yeah, this phase is something that includes a further reinforcement of the mindset coaching, where we have kind of gone through the first phase of assessment. We're instilling this idea of positive thinking, resilience, and self-belief. And it's where you kind of assess yourself of what kind of journey have I made so far. And this is where Scott really kind of unlocked the potential that he was seeing within himself. The ability to manage stress, to understand triggers, to avoid coping mechanisms, and to deal with your issues as they come up, because we all face them. Let's be clear about that. And the main facets we work on here is really accountability, which is more so in relation to coaching. This is where a lot more input comes into play, it's where we can start to level things up, maintain consistency, and really dial in the discipline that we're trying to build. It's progressive, in terms of training and the introduction of new fundamentals to gradually challenge the capability of your body and the movements that you're able to achieve. So, like I said, Scott then actually started to move into the phase of Olympic weightlifting, which is something many people shy away from. It's actually becoming a lot more popular now in general, so maybe we were ahead of the curve on that one. And it really does set the standard for continued refinement, especially when it comes to the nutritional habits that are built along the way for sustained progress, because at this point, this is where you really start to see results. You really start to see a change in your body, in your physical appearance, and in your mental framework. And a huge part of that is how you know that you're fueling your body. If you're feeling good, it's because you know you're doing the right things. If you're seeing the results, it's because you know you're doing the right things. Okay? It's a lot to take in. Then after that, we're into kind of months 7 to 9, which is the perform phase, I like to call it, where we optimize performance, where we really kind of dial in the aspect of physical and mental performance. It symbolizes the pursuit of peak performance, not just getting after it, but getting after it to a standard that you've really not been accustomed to before, really pushing what your boundaries can kind of allow you to gravitate towards. And at this point, this is where Scott really develops the trust in the process and his capabilities. He's really off on his own. He's really starting to throw ideas my way about, what about if we include this in training now? How do I best optimize my recovery techniques? My sleep's lacking some days. How do I get on top of that? What's the kind of supplements that I'm really trying to achieve intake of to really dial in that performance, to really help my body and help this lifestyle shift? And it's really comparable to fine-tuning a well-oiled machine, which involves pushing the boundaries, embracing high-intensity training, and optimizing the nutrition to fuel optimal performance. So this is where we take a lot more depth into the mindset coaching to achieve a peak mental state. I'm talking confident, the ability to make decisions, assured in your communication, and there's a real prowess to like the risks you're willing to take in life, the assurance behind those risks, and the structure that you set for yourself. The implementation of high intensity training kind of exposes your body and your mind to the challenge or the limits that you've placed on yourself. You push past them. You realize that those limits are only constructs of your mind. And when you see an output of crushing a workout that you didn't think you could crush, being on your back on the floor and realizing I didn't die, I still lifted a weight I never thought I'd lift, I still stayed on the rowing machine for longer than I thought I would, I still banged out more sets of my bicep curls than I thought I would. And that's really where it starts to bring it home of you're building this new person. And again, I'm talking from the perspective of, as in, I'm trying to talk to you of how you would go about this, right? Talking very me to you. But what I'm actually doing is I'm talking as if I am Scott. I had this witness of this journey, and the best way I'm understanding it to articulate it to yourself is putting myself in his shoes. Do you understand? This is why I'm trying to talk directly to yourself. Not saying because Scott did this all the time. Yeah, it's a really detailed understanding of what his journey represented and how he went about it. So after we hit the perform phase, this is when we really push it. And that's when we get to the kind of months 10 to 12, which is the compete phase, which is sustaining success and competing in life, which is an often overlooked aspect of life. People hear the word compete and they think, oh, I'm done with sports. I'm done with this aggressive nature for the drive to succeed in life. When it's not about that. You see, one of the core fundamentals of a negated state of self-worth is complacency. It's people realizing that they do not make the most of their potential. Okay? That you could have done more, that you could have applied yourself better, that you could have thought about it a different way, that the strategy could have been better. And it's essentially leaving no stone unturned. It's knowing that you lived your life to the fullest. And to compete with that, to compete in life, to be well driven, is a representation of that. So I don't just mean to compete in competitions, in fitness, sport, whatever. It opens the door for that. Sure, of course it opens the door. We have built your body and your mind to a point where you are able to fit into a competitive state, a competitive environment. But it's not a requirement. You just have the ability. That is what we're building. You can apply it however you want. And what we have prepared you for is the ability to apply that in specific events of life. So whether that means work, applying yourself in the time that you have. It could be competitions. And this is really where we kind of push what's possible. It's a phase where those who want to compete in life and really push have the opportunity to do just that. It involves specialized preparation for physical and mental readiness and symbolizes the culmination of the coaching process and the ability to compete at one's best. So, like I said, there's the option to kind of explore this competitive environment. And let's just come back up. And yeah, we have the opportunity to pick a desired event. I know that High Rocks is now becoming very popular with a lot of people. That also opens the door for people to get into CrossFit a lot more. Could just be you're really happy with how you look and you want to show that in the social media world. You really want to see how your content looks. You want to show that off to the world. You want to you want to seem driven, and you are driven. You've built that. So we have a period where we have achieved advanced mental resilience with peak performance strategies to back that up. The resilience is there, and you can now apply that to any strategy you now wish to. This is where you kind of can really explore where your desires lay and really see if that competitive drive is there. And it's not there for everyone, but if it is, we see where it can go. And undoubtedly, it is a celebration of achievements with a plan for ongoing success. Whether that involves maintenance, keep doing what you're doing, keep having me in your corner, set new goals, or we continue growing. Because although the compete phase of this is where we see the kind of upper echelon of the complacent to competitive program, life doesn't stop there. Life only gets going there. All you've done is open more doors that you can get into, that you can walk through. And each of these phases over a 12-month block, which is where Scott stayed with me a short while after that. I'm talking maybe 18 months in total, but the premise remains the same. They collectively represent a holistic approach to personal growth and development. These phases guide people through a transformative journey, starting with a solid foundation, build trust, self-belief, optimize performance, and optionally, competing at the highest level. It's a progressive path towards a successful and fulfilling life, addressing both the physical and mental aspects of discipline and achievement. And to conclude, this was a hell of a journey to be a part of. I'm sure Scott will be happy to explain this to you if you wanted to reach out to him for yourself and ask him any questions. And it was one hell of a grateful farewell. He really opened the door to what this journey could symbolize for people. Because it's not only an exploration of what he was able to achieve specifically, but what the process allows anyone to achieve should they apply themselves to this. So with that, I'm just in a position where I'm able to thank Scott. So thank you, Scott, for the journey and for your dedication to growth. So my well wishes, it's time to springboard into whatever comes next. And of course, with the Complacent to Competitive program, we are not here just to pick up the numbers. We're here for success, which is why we commit a satisfaction guarantee, which means that, simply put, we keep working with you until you reach your goal. And amazingly, if someone doesn't get to the point where they haven't reached their goal within 12 months, we keep going. There's nothing stopping us. We're committed to helping you change your life. And we want to make sure that you are completely satisfied with your progress every step of the way. The Complacent to Competitive program isn't just that. It's a lifestyle, it's an ethos, it's a way of life with a guiding principle that lets you live your life to your fullest. Your most confident self, your most well-driven self, your most knowledgeable self, and goal-orientated self. and I've just had the pleasure of talking about that for 40 minutes. I could have talked about it all day. But yeah, that's enough for now. So if you have any questions about how this journey unfolded, any questions of your own, I would love to hear them. Either drop them below, or you can send me a message directly. My @ is there to be seen. It's either Nath Clements LT on any platform, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, and my email address is also available for anyone who wants it. And yeah, thank you, Scott. What a journey. Over and out.